It was a rainy Friday evening in early October when everything changed. The kind of rain that makes you want to cancel all your plans and curl up with a good book or binge watch that show everyone's been talking about. I remember the sound of raindrops tapping against my apartment window, creating a soothing rhythm that contrasted with the chaos of my week. My name is Alex, and I'd been living in this modest one-bedroom apartment for almost 2 years. It wasn't anything special. Exposed brick on one wall that the landlord thought justified the vintage charm description in the listing. Furniture that was a mix of IKEA and Facebook Marketplace finds, and plants that somehow survived my inconsistent care. But it was home, and on that particular evening, it felt especially cozy as the rain created a natural barrier between me and the outside world. I had just finished a video call with my best friend Taylor, who had moved across the country for a job opportunity 6 months ago. These calls had become our ritual. Every Friday at 7 p.m., we'd catch up on our weeks, share gossip, and maintain the connection that distance threatened to weaken. Technology had become the lifeline of our friendship, the invisible thread that kept us connected despite the 3,000 miles between us. As I ended the call, I noticed my phone battery was at a critical 2%. I reached for my charger on the coffee table, only to find it wasn't there. Strange, I thought. I could have sworn I left it right here. After a quick search around the apartment, I remembered I had left it at the office in my rush to catch the early train home before the storm hit. Great, I muttered to myself as my phone screen went black. The digital lifeline to my social world had just been cut. In today's world, being without a phone feels like missing a limb. It's fascinating how dependent we've become on these devices. There are maps, our social connectors, our entertainment, our work tools, and sometimes it seems like they're extensions of our very selves. I settled on the couch, contemplating whether to watch TV or read a book, those ancient forms of entertainment people used before smartphones existed. The silence of my apartment felt unusually loud without the constant ping of notifications or the background music I usually streamed. That's when I heard it, 3 confident knocks on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and in the age of text before you visit, unannounced knocks had become rare and slightly suspicious. I approached the door cautiously and peered through the peephole. Standing there was a man I vaguely recognized from passing in the hallway. Apartment 4B, if I remembered correctly. I opened the door, and there he was, slightly damp from the rain, with an apologetic smile that immediately put me at ease. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said, running a hand through his dark curly hair that was glistening with raindrops. "I'm Jamie from 4B. We've passed each other in the hall a few times. This is going to sound like the most millennial problem ever, but my phone died, and I can't find my charger anywhere. I was wondering if I could borrow one for like 15 minutes? I'm waiting for an important email about a job interview." Jamie had the kind of face that seemed perpetually amused, like he was always on the verge of sharing a joke. His eyes were a warm brown that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and he had the kind of easy confidence that made you feel like you'd known him for years rather than seconds. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, nothing remarkable, yet there was something instantly likable about him. "I'd love to help, but you've caught me in the same technological crisis," I replied with a laugh. "I just realized I left my charger at work, and my phone just died too." Talk about cosmic timing. Jamie's laugh was genuine and warm. The universe conspiring against modern communication. Huh? Well, thanks anyway. I guess I'll try another neighbor. He turned to leave, but something made me call after him. "Wait," I said, surprising myself. "I might not have a charger, but I do have wine, beer, or coffee if you want to wait out the storm for a bit. Maybe the power of positive thinking will make our chargers materialize." The invitation came out before I could overthink it, which was unusual for me. I'm typically the person who rehearses social interactions in my head before they happen. Jamie turned back, his expression a mix of surprise and interest. "You know what? I'll take you up on that. The email can wait a bit longer, and it's not like I can refresh my inbox anyway." He stepped into my apartment, bringing with him the fresh scent of rain and a subtle cologne that smelled like cedar and something citrusy. "I'm Alex, by the way," I said, closing the door behind him. "Wine, beer, or coffee?" "Beer would be great. Thanks," Jamie replied, glancing around my apartment with curious eyes. "Nice place. I especially like your collection of succulents that looks suspiciously plastic." I laughed as I headed to the kitchen. "They're real, actually. Just incredibly resilient to neglect." The perfect plans for someone who travels a lot for work. I grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, opened them, and returned to find Jamie examining my bookshelf. Impressive collection, he commented, accepting the beer with a nod of thanks. You've got everything from classic literature to sci-fi too. Is that a book on the history of fonts? I felt a flush of embarrassment. It was a gift from a graphic designer friend. But it's actually fascinating. Did you know that the creator of Comic Sans never intended it to be used for anything other than speech bubbles in a Microsoft program? I did not know that, Jamie said, taking a sip of his beer. But now I have an excellent fact to share at parties to sound smarter than I am. We settled on opposite ends of my couch, the rain providing a perfect soundtrack to our unexpected encounter. There was something refreshing about meeting someone new without the ability to immediately look them up on social media or Google their name. It felt old-fashioned, like we were back in a time when people had to learn about each other through actual conversation. So, what do you do when you're not rescuing strangers with dead phones? I asked, curling my legs underneath me. I'm a sound engineer, Jamie replied. I work with a few local bands and at a recording studio downtown. The job interview I'm waiting to hear about is for a bigger studio that works with some national acts. What about you? I'm in digital marketing, I said. Ironic that I'm currently completely disconnected from the digital world. I help companies figure out how to get people's attention online, which is getting harder by the day. The great paradox of our time, Jamie mused. We're more connected than ever, yet people feel more isolated. I see it at shows all the time. A sea of phones recording instead of people actually experiencing the moment. I'm guilty of that, I admitted. I've watched entire concerts through my phone screen, only to never watch the videos again. We all do it, Jamie said with a shrug. It's like we're documenting our lives instead of living them sometimes. As we continued talking, I learned that Jamie had grown up in a small town in Oregon, moved to the city for college, and stayed because he fell in love with the music scene. He had a younger sister who was studying marine biology, parents who still lived in his hometown, and a cat named Bowie who, according to Jamie, had the attitude of a rock star but none of the talent. I found myself sharing more than I usually would with someone I'd just met. I told him about growing up as an only child, my passion for photography that had become a neglected hobby, and my recent promotion that had me traveling to client meetings more often than I'd like. There was something about Jamie that made conversation easy. He listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and shared his own experiences in a way that built bridges rather than walls. We were deep in a debate about whether vinyl records actually sound better or if people just like the ritual of playing them when it happened. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the apartment was plunged into darkness. The sudden power outage caught us both by surprise. Well, Jamie's voice came from the darkness. I guess the universe really is determined to disconnect us completely tonight. I laughed, feeling strangely calm about the situation. I think I have some candles somewhere. Give me a second. I carefully made my way to the kitchen, using my phone's flashlight. Oh wait, that wasn't an option anymore. I fumbled through drawers until I found a few candles and a lighter, a remnant from my short-lived attempt at meditation last year. I returned to the living room and set up the candles on the coffee table, casting a warm, flickering glow that transformed my ordinary apartment into something almost magical. Jamie's face looked different in the candlelight, softer somehow, with shadows dancing across his features. This is nice, he said quietly. When was the last time you sat in a room with no electricity, no phones, nothing but conversation and candlelight? I thought about it. Honestly, I can't remember. Maybe during a camping trip in college, but even then, we probably had our phones for music or photos. It's kind of peaceful, Jamie observed. No notifications, no emails, no distractions. Just presence. The power outage affected the entire building, and as we looked out the window, we could see that much of the neighborhood was dark as well. The rain continued to fall, creating a cozy backdrop to our unexpected evening together. Without the constant pull of technology, our conversation deepened. We talked about dreams and fears, about the places we wanted to travel to, and the moments in our lives that had shaped us. Jamie told me about the time he spent a summer working on a fishing boat in Alaska to save money for recording equipment, and how that experience taught him more about himself than 4 years of college. I shared the story of how I'd once quit a high-paying job to backpack through Europe for 3 months, only to return and find that the company wanted to hire me as a consultant for twice my previous salary. Life has a funny way of working out sometimes, Jamie said, leaning back against the couch. Like tonight. If our phones hadn't died, if the power hadn't gone out, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. True, I agreed. We'd be in our separate apartments, scrolling through social media or watching Netflix, thinking we're connected to the world, but actually just alone together. There was a moment of silence as we both considered this. I could feel something shifting between us, a connection forming that went beyond the circumstantial nature of our meeting. It wasn't just that Jamie was attractive, though he certainly was. It was the way he listened, the way he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say, the way his presence filled my apartment with a warmth that had nothing to do with the candles. "Can I ask you something personal?" Jamie said, breaking the silence. "Sure," I replied, curious. "When was the last time you felt truly connected to someone? Not through texts or social media, but really connected?" The question caught me off guard with its directness and depth. I took a moment to consider my answer, wanting to be honest, but feeling suddenly vulnerable. "It's been a while," I admitted. "I have friends, good friends, but there's something about our digital lives that keeps us at a certain distance. We know the highlights of each other's days through Instagram stories, but we don't always know the struggles, the quiet moments, the real stuff." I paused, swirling the last of my beer in the bottle. "What about you?" Jamie's expression was thoughtful. "I think that's why I love music so much. When you're at a show and everyone is feeling the same beat, moving together, experiencing something collective, that's connection. But one-on-one, it's rare. People guard themselves. We've all been hurt, rejected, misunderstood. It's easier to keep things surface level. Yet here we are, having this conversation," I pointed out. "Here we are," Jamie echoed with a smile. Maybe power outages should happen more often. As the evening progressed, we moved from beer to the bottle of wine I had been saving for a special occasion. The candlelight created an intimate atmosphere that made it feel like we were the only two people awake in the world. We shared stories from our childhoods, laughed about dating disasters, and discovered we had both attended the same concert 3 years ago without meeting. "Wait, you were at the Riverside Theater for the National? That's crazy," Jamie exclaimed. "I was working sound for the opening act." "I was there with my ex," I said. "We had a huge fight that night because he spent the entire show on his phone answering work emails." "His loss," Jamie said simply, his eyes meeting mine across the candlelit space between us. There was something in that look, a question, an invitation, a possibility. The conversation naturally shifted to relationships and dating in the modern world. Jamie talked about the superficiality of dating apps, where people were reduced to a few photos and a clever bio. I shared my frustration with the endless texting that never seemed to lead to meaningful connections. "I went on a date last month with someone I'd been texting for weeks," I told him. "We had these great conversations over text, but in person, nothing. No chemistry, no connection. It was like meeting a stranger." "That's the digital paradox," Jamie said. "We think we know people because we've seen their carefully curated online presence. But real connection happens in moments like this, unplanned, unfiltered, face-to-face." As he spoke, Jamie gestured with his hands, and one of them accidentally brushed against mine on the couch between us. It was a brief touch, casual and unintentional, but I felt it like an electric current. Our eyes met again, and this time, the silence between us held a different quality, charged, expectant. Jamie cleared his throat. "I should probably confess something," he said, his voice a little lower than before. "I've seen you around the building for months, and I've always wanted to introduce myself." The dead phone wasn't exactly a lie, but it was convenient timing. I felt a smile spreading across my face. "Are you saying you manufactured a technological crisis just to meet me?" "Not manufactured," Jamie corrected with a grin. "Opportunistic. There's a difference." "Well, in the spirit of confessions," I replied, feeling a surge of boldness that might have been the wine or might have been something else entirely. "I've noticed you too. The guy from 4B who always has headphones around his neck and hums in the elevator." "You heard that?" "I thought I was being subtle," Jamie laughed, running a hand through his hair in that way I was beginning to find endearing. "Not subtle at all," I assured him. But it was cute. The word hung in the air between us, a small acknowledgement of attraction that changed the atmosphere in the room. Jamie's eyes held mine, and I felt a flutter of anticipation in my chest. The rain continued to drum against the windows, but it seemed distant now, part of another world outside the bubble we had created. Just as the moment seemed to be building towards something more, the lights flickered back on, the sudden brightness making us both blink in surprise. My apartment, which had seemed so magical in the candlelight, returned to its ordinary state. The spell wasn't broken, exactly, but it had shifted. "Power's back," Jamie stated the obvious, looking around as if seeing the apartment for the first time. "Yeah," I said, feeling strangely disappointed. "I guess you can charge your phone now. Except we still don't have chargers." We both laughed, and the tension eased slightly. Jamie glanced at his watch. "It's getting late. I should probably head back to my apartment and see if I can find my charger. That email isn't going to check itself." I nodded, trying not to show my reluctance to end the evening. "Of course. The job interview." Jamie stood up, and I followed suit, walking him to the door. There was an awkward moment as we stood facing each other, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "This was unexpected," Jamie said finally. "But really nice." "It was," I agreed. Who knew a power outage could be so entertaining? Jamie smiled, that warm smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. "Since our phones are dead and I can't ask for your number the traditional way, how about I come by tomorrow? Maybe we could get coffee or something." "I'd like that," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the wine. "Or you could leave me your number the old-fashioned way, with a pen and paper." Jamie laughed. "Look at us, reverting to 20th century technology." He accepted the notepad and pen I offered, scribbling down his number. "Call me when your phone resurrects." "I will," I promised. There was another moment of hesitation, and then Jamie leaned in and placed a soft, quick kiss on my cheek. "Good night, Alex. Thanks for the beer, the wine, and the conversation." "Good night, Jamie," I replied, my cheek tingling where his lips had touched. After he left, I stood in my apartment, which suddenly felt emptier than before. I touched my cheek absently, replaying the evening in my mind. It was strange how a series of technological failures had led to one of the most genuine connections I'd experienced in years. There was something beautifully ironic about it. In a world where we were constantly connected through devices, it took being completely disconnected to truly connect with another person. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual for a Saturday. I plugged in my now-found charger, it had been in my gym bag all along, and watched as my phone came back to life, buzzing with delayed notifications. Text messages, emails, social media alerts, the digital world demanding my attention after a night of blissful disconnection. But among the notifications was one that made me smile, a text from an unknown number. "Good morning, Alex from 3A. It's Jamie from 4B. Found my charger under my cat, who was sleeping on it. Still up for coffee today? There's a place on the corner that makes great avocado toast. Very millennial of us, I know. Let me know when you're free." I felt a flutter of excitement as I typed my reply. "Good morning, Jamie from 4B. Coffee sounds perfect. How about 11? And for the record, I fully embraced the millennial avocado toast stereotype. His response came almost immediately. 11 is perfect. And I'm glad to hear you're not ashamed of our generation's contribution to culinary history. See you soon. As I got ready for our coffee date, I couldn't help but reflect on how differently this connection had formed compared to my recent dating experiences. There had been no carefully selected profile pictures, no witty text exchanges stretched over days or weeks, no Googling each other's names or scrolling through social media feeds to form preconceptions. Instead, there had been an authentic, face-to-face interaction, unfiltered by digital personas or curated online images. In a world where technology often creates the illusion of connection while actually keeping us apart, Jamie and I had found each other because our devices had failed us. It was a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful connections happen when we least expect them, and often in ways we couldn't have planned. As I left my apartment to meet Jamie, I decided to leave my fully charged phone behind. Just this once, I wanted to experience the connection without digital distractions, to be fully present in the moment rather than documenting it for some future reminiscence. The irony wasn't lost on me, a digital marketer choosing to disconnect, but perhaps that's what made it all the more significant. In the end, what began as a simple request for a charger had evolved into something much more powerful, a genuine human connection in an increasingly digital world. And as I walked to meet Jamie, I couldn't help but feel grateful for dead phones, power outages, and the unexpected moments that remind us what it means to truly connect. Total _char_count, 18,743.